Hi there, Higher Running Coach and Hoka Athlete Sage Kande here with another Training Talk Tuesday. Thank you so much for all your questions. Top voted one from several weeks ago was kind of the idea of how our training plans at Higher Running are geared more for some serious higher mileage runners, maybe younger runners, and how we could maybe adapt those if you're a more beginner runner, you don't have time to run super high mileage, or you're an older runner, masters, extra masters runner, who just, is trying to squeeze in some late marathon PRs and stuff like that. And kind of the idea of how things change as you get older. And again, I'm only 36 years old. I know a lot of you, a lot of people we've coached over the years are quite a bit older than us, maybe several decades older than us. Maybe you came into running later in life. Maybe you didn't start till you were after you were 40 or 50 years old. And I know, there's a lot of people out there in the US, they usually designate a master's category at 40 years old, which I am kind of getting close to. And I will say in my defense, I started running pretty seriously at the age of 12, and I started running 100-mile weeks when I was 20 years old, and I've put in a lot of miles. So my age kind of as a high mileage runner is pretty old, probably compared to a lot of you who maybe haven't run the high mileage for all the decades that I've been running. But people start at different levels. Some people start and then they take a long break in their 20s and then they get back into it. So your mileage background really varies. There's your chronological age, then also your running age. And what events you focus on also kind of matters, or what other sports you play, because if you're doing a bunch of 100-mile ultra marathons, that might be more demanding than someone who's mainly just doing 5Ks here and there. So you have to take that into consideration. You have to take into consideration genetics as well. Everyone's quite a bit different, how your genes turn on and off through different things, who your parents are, but also your lifestyle factors, diet, exercise, work, office environment, family stress, obligations, sleep, things like that are going to affect all these things that I'm going to talk about. But the general trend, I will say, and especially as a guy, it is kind of different between men and women as well, generally. And these are kind of generalizations, general trends, is that as you get older, I hate to break it to you, but a lot of times your VO2 max, your maximum aerobic capacity, as well as your all-out sprint speed will start to kind of drop off. Now, that's not always true for everyone. You could be a lot healthier, maybe later in life than you were in your 20s or 30s or something like that. But generally, that VO2 max, lung capacity, max heart rate is going to start going down. It actually peaks pretty early in life, like when you're like 18, 20 years old. But if you're not exercising back then, maybe you wouldn't know that necessarily. So, top end speed, muscle tension, if you think about things like flexibility as well, when I was a kid, I was actually kind of flexible. And then as I got older, after puberty, started getting really stiff, lack of mobility. So you take these things into account. You say, okay, my top end sprint speed, maybe I'm not going to be a world-class sprinter after I'm 50 years old. Maybe save that for people who are 20 years old, right? Maybe I don't have the vertical jump that I used to have, the fast twitch muscle fibers, the muscle tension isn't quite there, or it starts to decline a bit. Now we'll address that later. But then also the max aerobic capacity, running your fastest 1500 meter time or mile time generally happens with runners who have been focused training in their 20s and 30s and not after they're a master's runner. Now, if you started running later in life, you could still be smashing PRs even at the mile, maybe later in life. So there are exceptions to the rule, but generally, you don't want to be counting on having your highest max heart rate, your highest VO2 max measures when you've been running for decades and decades and decades. I know mine's declined over the years. I'm not going out there and smashing my mile or 1500 meter PR anytime soon, probably. But it really does depend on the person. So you take these changes in mind. The other thing we take into account as we get older is hormonal changes. For men, there's a general trend of dropping testosterone, things like that. Women, menopause, and all the hormones and changes that go through these life events as we get older. That could change actually childbirth as well for women. Some women get a lot faster after having a kid or two, and guys get, for guys it's going to be probably more psychological dad strength. So to speak, and it does get harder maybe because you have different things maybe going on with your job or your career. you're not sleeping as much, you got big projects at work, you're looking to get promoted. The work, family, running, life balance is probably very dynamic as you go through the decades, right? So that's another factor that could change how you structure your training program. Now, to get to the heart of the talk, we take these things into account and we realize you need more bang for your buck, basically, for the time that you spend training. And how you get that at age 50 or age 60 or age 70 or even age 40 might be a lot different than if you were a college or university student at age 20 or a teenager or someone who just started running when they're 30 years old, right? It is a little bit different. And generally the things that change is you have a lot on your plate. You can't run super high mileage. Maybe, 30 miles a week, 50K a week is a good level for a lot of people. That's kind of manageable. You're running 5 days a week, maybe, pretty regular, consistent. You build aerobic base. But on top of that, as a master's runner or an older runner or someone who's more injury prone because of these hormonal changes, these life stresses, lifestyle factors that have changed, your body over time, you have to do more strength training. You have to do more strength training, more resistance training. You have to work on more mobility training to keep flexible than, a teenager who's 18 years old, who takes things more for granted. So those are some of the things that change, and those are some of the things that I would change in a training plan for someone, especially who's been running for quite some time, over 5 or 10 years. Maybe they've run higher mileage, but they want to dial back and stay healthy, because staying healthy is really the name of the game. And as you get older, it's really important to keep up that muscle mass, keep up that strength, keep up that bone density by adding in probably more strength training. You don't have to go to the gym and do these maximal lifts. You might blow out your back or pull something, but doing some weight training and strength training, I think, becomes more important as we age and get older, to keep active in the gym. Whereas when you're younger, sometimes you could get away with things that you haven't developed muscle imbalances to, and you're more flexible, you're more adaptable to late nights and partying and not sleeping very much, and then eating pizza for breakfast and stuff like that, right? So, metabolic shift, metabolism slows down also generally as we age. So diet becomes a very important thing as well. It's always kind of important, but what you eat and these lifestyle factors do turn on and off genes and can really affect your overall health, but also your running health and injury resistance. So diet's very important. Obviously, sleep. Sleep, people could actually get away with slightly less sleep, I think, generally as they get older. That doesn't mean you want to be burning it hot with only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. That's probably too little, especially if you're running and doing weight training. But, you try to get as much as you can and as consistent as you can. It's interesting because teenagers, when they're growing, they need a lot of sleep. You might sleep in, 8, 9, 10 hours a night. But then in your 20s, maybe you're out at the bars or working really hard, or university studies, you got a rock and roll sleep schedule. It's a little bit different. As you get older, maybe things start to stabilize in your career path, family life, balance, and you could be consistent with your sleep, but it's still something that most people generally need more of, and it really helps with the recovery. Now, the final point I want to make is the recovery in the training plan. If we're going to build in extra recovery days, so to speak, between hard efforts. So maybe instead of doing a hard 22-mile long run, 43K, 44, or no, that's not 43K, it's like 38K long run, you would maybe only do an 18-mile long run or 30K long run because we're doing slightly less mileage. So we're reducing the volume, we're reducing the relative intensity too, but we're adding in some more weight training. So those are some of the things I would think about training someone who's really pressed for time, trying to get an efficient training. That being said, there's still a lot to be said with quality training, quality miles, because you want to get a lot of bang for your buck. So a lot of things like tempo runs, 2 times 2 miles, 2 times 3K at half marathon to 10K type of effort. A lot of speed work kind of in the 10K pace range for the lactate threshold becomes very valuable because even if you're only doing 5K, 6K of work, you're getting in a lot of aerobic benefits, but also muscle strength adaptations and running efficiency, running economy adaptations. So maybe you're not blasting all out sprints, 200 meters, 100 meter speed stuff as much because you don't want to pull a hamstring, but you're getting in moderate intensity, moderate mileage, you're balancing things out with weight training, healthier diet, better sleep, or at least more consistent sleep, and watching things like that, as well as stretching more and doing dynamic exercises. I know personally, in my own story, I've gotten some muscle imbalances kind of over time, and part of that happens with running a lot, having bad habits, sitting too much in an office chair with bad form, not stretching as much, and just kind of getting tighter and less flexible with the higher mileage running over the decades. So little things like that do make a difference, especially as you get older, and you do want to look into those. But that being said, a lot of you have great improvements to be made. A lot of people barely scratch the surface of their full potential, and they could reach their full potential much later in life by doing all these little things, training smart, and progressing with their aerobic base, especially if you started running later in life or you haven't run a full consistent training program of higher mileage and you're getting into running more seriously. We've seen all sorts of people that we've coached and people that have used our training plans at higher running, followed advice on this YouTube channel, smash their PRs, especially at longer distances, half marathon, but even the 5K, even much later in life in their 50s and 60s. And yeah, just progressing like that. If you ran really fast in your 20s and were training at a really high level, it's generally hard to run a personal best when you're in your 40s or 50s. But for most of you out there, again, you're just scratching the surface of your potential. You have a lot of room probably for improvement. And just staying healthy is the name of the game, and should be a good overall balance for your life, trying to enjoy the process, enjoy running, and stay healthy long term. So thanks so much for following along on here. Again, really appreciate all the support for the Patreon supporters making this channel possible, as well as people that purchase our training plans at Higher Running. That's higherrunning.com. Coach Sandy and I sell training plans for any surface, any distance. We have a membership thing on there as well. Premium members get access to our Discord server. Also, final note, we have hats for US shipping only, international. We've been shipping these new hat designs for US domestic, and you can check out that order form on the website as well. 3 different hat models. There's a warm beanie, but also the trucker hats. Same trucker hat design fit, new logos and new color designs. So check that out, higherrunning.com. Thank you again so much for your support. Thanks for subscribing on here. Comment below with future training talk topics and vote up ones that you would like to hear about. Thanks again. Hope you're doing well, and stay tuned for more VO2 Max Productions.